Well, as we continue our series about a man in the Bible named Joshua, one of the things that we see that we can relate to is this desire to succeed at what we do. I don't know if you're like this, but I hate to fail at things. I'm not sure there's anybody that really enjoys failing or messing things up. Whether it's a project at work that you know you've got to get right, or it's your marriage that you want to make sure you're doing it the right way and you're not getting that wrong, or raising your kids that you don't mess them up. There's this desire in all of us to succeed and be successful in what we do. And it was no different with Joshua, which is why God gives us his word so that we can align our perspectives with his, to obey his commands so that we can navigate life's challenges with confidence. See, Joshua has been put in charge of leading a nation of people. We've talked about that for the past couple weeks, but here's what I want to point out for us. This task was not just like leading this group of people in this room. It was a whole nation of people. The historians estimate that around 3 million men, women, and children were part of the exodus out of Egypt into the wilderness. This is a lot of people. And I think sometimes we hear big numbers like that, and we don't have a box to put that in. So I did a little math this week, and Soldier Field downtown holds roughly 60,000 people. You would have to fill Soldier Field 50 times to get to the amount of people that Joshua is leading around the wilderness and into this promised land. It is a massive task. And so to get our bearings straight with where we're at in this point in the book, with Joshua, see, the people have escaped from slavery in 400 years of slavery in Egypt. They're finally going to enjoy the promised land that God had promised the ancestors centuries before. They wasted about 40 years wandering in the desert. God now tells Joshua it's time to lead with strength and courage, and so Joshua does just that. I want to show you a map of the landscape of Israel and the surrounding regions to help us get some perspective. This is a satellite image of the land, and while there is some debate exactly what route the Exodus took place in and where people were, this is generally the agreed upon kind of location. So Egypt, if I can come back here, the Egypt where they were in slavery, they were right up in this region. Then they escaped from slavery. They came down. They believe there's again some debate, but some believe that Mount Sinai was somewhere in here where Moses received the 10 Commandments, right? That whole thing. Then God leads them up around this way and to the wilderness. Moses sends 12 spies into the promised land. The promised land is right in here. This is the promised land. This is the land that God had promised this people. They go up into there, they spy it out, they come back, and they're like, it's awesome. The problem is we can't do it. And so they waste 40 years in the wilderness right in this area here while they wait for a whole generation of people to die. And for God to finally allow them into the promised land. We zoom in a little bit on this map up into this region, and we see we've got the Sea of Galilee to the north, and the Dead Sea to the south, and the Jordan River that connects the two. This is the promised land right in here, Canaan and Jericho and all of that. This is the direction, this is the place, this is where they are navigating. The Galilee, the Sea of Galilee, all of the water from there flows down the Jordan River to the Dead Sea, but because the Dead Sea doesn't have any outlets, everything just collects there, and there's such a high mineral and salt level that it basically sterilizes the water. There's no life, nothing can really survive there, and it just sits. And so this is the geographical landscape of what we're looking at. All right, so that's enough little history and geography. Some of you are all geeking out on the maps, and others of you are like, let's go. Come on. See, I told you, if you wanted to, you could just fill that Connect card out for the first 5 minutes. So let me show us some practical lessons that we can learn from Joshua and his journey leading the Israelites into the promised land. And I want to start with this one. This big idea that if you follow God, you'll never regret the places that he will lead you to. If you choose to follow God, you will never regret the places he will lead you to. See, the Israelites, when Moses brought them to the promised land, they wouldn't follow God into the land. They wouldn't trust him by faith, and so they wasted time. And they regretted not being able to go to where God had promised. They wasted it. But now Joshua has a chance, and following the Lord, we see that we'll never regret where he wants to take us, what he wants to do in and through us. And whether you're someone that loves change, you love the adventure of, and like your house is constantly, like you walk home, you walk in the house and your spouse is like, just flip the whole house backwards, and the dining room's over here now, and the living room's over there, and you switch bedrooms with your kids or something, and like you just love change. Whether you're like that or you hate change and you want nothing to ever change and your house still looks like it did the day that you bought it, the reality is God is often leading and calling us to new places for our hearts to rest, new habits for us to form, new priorities for our life and for our family, new areas of our life to trust God with, and new seasons of struggles and obstacles to navigate. And so I want to give us 4 instructions that Joshua gives the people as they enter this promised land, because I believe that these same instructions can help us navigate whatever season we are facing today. The wait is over. It's time to enter the promised land. Joshua chapter 3 is where we continue now. And it says this: Then Joshua rose early. He's not waiting. He's not delaying. He's obeying what God has told him. He gets up early in the morning. They set out from Shittim. Despite how you might want to pronounce that, it is Shittim. And if it's not, then at least I'm not cussing in church. They came to the Jordan, all right? They came to the Jordan, and he and all the people of Israel, and they lodged there before they passed over. And at the end of 3 days, the officers went through the camp and commanded the people, as soon as you see the ark, here's the word, as soon as you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord, your God, being carried by the Levitical priests, even then you shall set out from your place, and you should follow it. Yet there should be a distance between you and it of about 2,000 cubits in length. Don't come near the Ark of the Covenant and the priests carrying it, in order that you may know the way that you are to go, for you have not passed this way before. And there's several things that I want to point out here in just these few verses that we start off in chapter 3. See, the first one is this: they have never gone this way. They had spent a lot of time kind of south of the Dead Sea. They had spent some time, the spies went up and spied out the land, but God is bringing them to a different place. He's bringing them in a different direction, and so he tells them to follow. He tells them to follow the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord. When you see the Ark carried by the priests, you should follow it. And in studying through the Old Testament, you learn that the Ark of the Covenant was actually the most sacred item placed into the temple or the tabernacle. If you saw Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, maybe you saw an image or a depiction of what that ark could have looked like. It was made of wood and plated and covered in gold. Historians believe it could have looked something like this. I'll come over here. Not a very large box, but a box with rings and poles, because the priests were the only ones that could carry this box, but they were not allowed to touch it. They weren't allowed to drop it, and so they carried it with these poles. They had these 2 cherubim, these angel depictions over the top with their wings coming over, and that is where the very presence of God would reside. It was called the Bema Seat. This was the presence of God. It was holy and special. It was significant because this is where the power and presence of the Lord rested and led the people. It was not something to be taken lightly, so they used those poles to carry it. And if you were here last week, if you missed it, you can always catch up online. But last week, we looked at God's instructions to Joshua to remember God's presence that goes before them. This was the physical representation of God's presence. You've got these. Now, I like the picture because I think it helps us understand what these priests would have been wearing, what they would have looked like, how they would have carried the box. But I think they would have been way more jacked than the picture shows, right? They're carrying this thing everywhere, miles and miles, up and down mountains. I mean, that's just how I like to picture it. God tells Joshua, remember my presence. My presence is represented by this Ark of the Covenant. Remember my promises. I've told you what I will do. I will follow through. Remember my principles. I've given you my word. Don't walk away from that. And now Joshua gives very similar instructions as he leads the people. In verse 3, Joshua tells the people, as soon as you see the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord being carried by the priest, it's time to go. It's time you can follow it. But verse 4 gives us some specific instructions for how they are to follow. That they're not to get too close. That they're to keep their distance. 2,000 cubits is the equivalent of roughly just over a half a mile. That's how far ahead the Ark of the Covenant would be, and then a half a mile or more, just more behind, would be the people following. See, here's the first thing Joshua tells them to do. Wherever you go, whatever you face, whatever you do, let the Lord lead. Let the Lord lead. It's such a simple instruction. Let the Ark of the Covenant go before you, and then when it's about a half a mile out, then you follow. But just make sure that the Lord is leading the way. This is the presence of God that goes before you. The people are waiting for it, and once it goes, they begin to follow. See, for you and I, when times come where we have to make a big decision, a major choice, a life change, I encourage you, make sure the Lord is leading the way. Make sure you're not trying to go your own way or do it on your own terms. Let God lead, because if you follow God, you'll never regret the places that he wants to lead you. But if you're anything like me, sometimes I can get ahead of God. I can see things that I want, and I can lose focus or get so focused on what I want that I forget to ask God where he might be leading, what he wants to do. I forget to ask God where he's wanting me to wait and when he's wanting me to follow. I can get so impulsive that I do things out of emotion or excitement, and later I look back and I'm like, oh yeah, and God, could you bless my mess? could you show up now? See, what's always a better way is to remember that God's out in front leading, that he's in charge. And if I'm not following him, then I'm going to be bringing quite a bit of disaster and struggle and consequences on myself and on those around me. See, I'm not sure if you knew this, but for those who say they're followers of Jesus, that means we actually follow Jesus. We let him lead. We let him take charge, and we follow. See, what is God doing? If we're going to let God lead, we ask questions like, God, where do you want to lead me? What direction do you want to go? Where are you opening doors versus where am I trying to force a door open? Got it. How are you going to make a way for me? There's some significance here to the 2,000 cubits, the little over half a mile that they're to leave a space between. And it's interesting because a half a mile was close enough that you could see the direction to go, especially because they hadn't been this way and they needed to know where to go. But it's also far enough away to keep you still walking by faith. To keep your eyes on the horizon, to keep your eyes on where God, he turned, let's start making a shift. To know where he's going and to follow in step. It's close enough to see, but far enough away to still have to follow by faith. It kept them from trying to get out ahead of God. It kept them from losing sight of where he was wanting to take them. So my question for us is, where have you been running ahead of God? Where has God been trying to lead, but you've been so far out in front that you can't follow because you've taken the lead? Where might God be wanting to lead you if you would make room and let him lead? It might be in a job situation. It might be a relocation. It might be with spending or a specific purchase that you're looking to make. It may be something with your kids or in a relationship. Where is God wanting to lead that? Where is God wanting to lead you? And will you wait? Will you pause long enough to let him get out in front and show you the way? Let God lead. We find the second instruction that is given to the people in verse 5 and 6. It says, then Joshua said, consecrate yourselves, For tomorrow the Lord will do wonders among you. And Joshua said to the priests, take up the Ark of the Covenant and pass on before the people. So they took the Ark of the Covenant and they went before all of the people. Joshua says, consecrate yourselves. Your translation may say sanctify or purify yourselves. This was the command given to them, but these are pretty churchy words. They're not words we maybe use every day, and so we may be a little bit confused at these theological terms that we're not familiar with, so let me help us out a little bit. To consecrate yourself simply means to get right with God. To realign your life, to get right with God so that you can be completely devoted to Him. Take inventory of my life and say if there's anything corrupt in my heart, if there's any action or activity, behavior or thought, word or deed that is not consistent with God, if that my conscience is saying, hey, this doesn't line up with being a follower of Jesus. If God's word tells me something that I'm not doing or aligned with, then I confess it and I realign my life. I say that doesn't fit with a life consistent with following Jesus. I confess that. I'm sorry. I need forgiveness. Here's the second command. Align your life with God's word. Consecrate yourself. What God says, where He's leading, His standard. I realign, I reposition, I reprioritize so that I'm aligned with Him. And Joshua tells the people, it's time to get your life rightly aligned with God, to examine yourself. And anything that is not in line with God's word, anything in your life that's keeping you at a distance from obeying God and following Him, it's time to make that right. It's kind of like getting a tire alignment. It's not the same, but it's kind of like it. See, when your tires aren't aligned, when you have a bad alignment, the tire, that can cause you to pull and drift off the road. It causes wear and tear on your tires, and it can cause other damage on your vehicle as well. And that's what a misaligned life will do. It'll slowly cause you to drift off course, to become distant in following God's lead. It'll cause wear and tear in other areas of my life, which is why the psalmist David shows us what it looks like to realign, to consecrate my life to God in Psalm 139. Psalm 139, the psalmist David, he says it like this. He says, search me, O God. Know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there is any grievous way in me. God, you know me better than I know myself, so search me. My thoughts, my actions, my attitudes. Bring it to the surface. Make me aware of it that I can surrender it. Here it is. And God, lead me in the way everlasting. You want God to lead the way? You want Him to have control? Then consecrate yourself. Surrender before God and say, God, you can have all of me. I shift my priorities, I shift my direction, and I follow your leading. 1 John 1:9 tells us that if we confess our sin, Jesus is faithful and just, and He will forgive us our sins, our impurities. He will make us pure and clean. We will be consecrated so that we can be righteous before Him. He'll cleanse us from all that unrighteousness. I think it's incredible that God has made a way that we can approach Him and be totally forgiven, totally realigned, consecrated back to Him if we will humble ourselves and receive the forgiveness of Jesus Christ that He generously provided by dying on the cross for our sins. That's what we celebrate on Good Friday and Easter. And now I don't want you to miss the order that we see here, because while Joshua says consecrate yourselves, get right, don't let a long time go by before you realign your life from drifting, and then he says God will do amazing things. Consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow we will see God do wonders among you. As we continue on, we see God instruct Joshua, hey, I need you to go tell the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant when they get to the Jordan that they stand in the middle of the river. When they get there, they're to just walk in. And if you look forward at verse 15, and you maybe just make a little note for yourself or check that out. Verse 15 tells us that the Jordan River was at flood stages during this year. during this time of year. It was the harvest season. It was March, April, kind of this time of year, and all the waters from the mountains, the headwaters of the Jordan begin to melt, and this time of year, the Jordan River is rushing fast. It's about 200 feet wide and at least 20 feet deep. It's a huge, rushing, fast-moving river down to the Dead Sea. And the instruction that the priests are given, carrying the Ark of the Covenant, is as you go a half mile away from everybody else, just step into the water. Once you get to the Jordan River, just put your foot in. Verse 9 says it like this, and Joshua said to the people, "Come here and listen to the word of the Lord your God." Isn't that cool? And just pause there for a second. Come and listen to the word of the creator of the universe. Let me invite you to do the same thing this morning. Here is how you will know that the living God is among you, and that he will, without fail, drive out from before you the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Hivites, the Perizzites, the Gerishonites, the Amorites, the Jebusites, and all the other ites. Behold, the ark of the covenant of the Lord of all the earth is passing before you into the Jordan. Now therefore take 12 men from the tribes of Israel, from each tribe a man. And when the soles of the feet of the priests bearing the ark of the Lord enter the water, then the Lord of all the earth shall rest in the waters of the Jordan, and the waters of the Jordan shall be cut off from flowing, and the waters coming down from above shall stand in one heap. Yes, you priests, carrying the most important thing on the face of the planet, just step into that treacherous, dangerous river flowing and trust God that he will provide, and he will create a barrier and a wall and heap up the water. See, here's the third instruction for the people. Walk by faith. Let God lead. Let God lead your life. Let God realign your life with his word and walk by faith. I don't know about you, but I would much rather God go ahead of me and kind of put everything in line. Make everything work out. Make it really easy to follow. See, like first, God, why don't you show me how my finances are going to work out, and then I'll start giving to the church. God, first, you protect me professionally at work, and then I'll make the decision to be honest today. Or God, show me first that I can find someone hot, and then I'll promise to only date Christians. God, first you do a thing, and then I'll follow. God, first you give me the confidence, and then I'll know to obey. Listen, God says obey, and I'll show you things that will give you the courage about the future that I have for you. Let him lead. Walk by faith, and you'll never regret it. So the priests reach the Jordan River, and they step in. They don't hesitate. They don't pause. They walk by faith. And verse 16 tells us the waters coming down from above stood and rose up in a heap very far away, as far as Adam, a city. And the people passed over opposite of Jericho on dry land. And here in this one verse, we're given some geography locations of what's happening, how it's happening, and some detail that can really help us understand where they're at. So we go back to the map. They're wandering 40 years down here off of the screen. God leads them not directly up to Jericho, not the most direct route. He takes them around so that they have to trust him. They've never been this way before. They camp out across the Jordan, across from Jericho. This is where they cross. And it says that the waters were rolled back as far as Adam. That's a far distance. It's roughly 18 miles away. You think that's so weird? Why would he roll back waters so far away? I don't get that. Well, I love the detail we're given, because if you think about it, the number of Israelites coming out of Egypt, traveling across the Jordan, are around 3 million men, women, and children. It's a nation of people. And from a logical standpoint, the detail given in this passage helps bring evidence and validity to the miracle that God does. See, I wonder how long it would have taken for that many people to cross the Jordan River. Don't give me the credit for it. Someone else did the math on this, and I get it. Geography, history, now math. This isn't what church is supposed to be. Just stick with me for a second. Someone did the math here. And if they were to walk, if God only parted the sea enough for two people to walk side by side, it would have been a line of 800 miles and taken at least a month, if not more, for the whole nation to cross. That's kind of somehow what we see in the artist's drawings and in the depictions of how God opens up water. These are millions of people. So you expand that and say, but if it's 5,000 people lined up side by side and going across, it would be a swath of 3 miles that you could pass in a day. Expand that out to 18 miles that they had to cross over, and you could get 3 million people across in half a day or less. Isn't God so cool how he gives us the little details that when we dig into it a little bit, like, wait a minute, yeah, that makes way more sense. It says that they crossed on dry ground. By the way, I think the priest was pretty happy that they had 18 miles. They're standing in the middle of this thing, holding the ark for half a day while 3 million people cross over, waiting for the people to get across. They cross on dry ground. I just love how God uses these details to glorify himself as he rolls back the waters, but he also dries up the ground. So they're not walking across in muddy, sloppy, swampy type ground. See, I wonder, what is God wanting you to step into so that he can show you his power? God says, walk by faith. Just put your foot in and go. And I will roll back the waters and I will dry up the ground, and you will be safe and secure. If you will follow me, you will never regret the places I want to lead you, God says. I wonder where God is wanting you to step out in faith so that he can show you just how big he is, so that he can show you how far he can roll back the obstacles that seem impossible to move, so that he can show you and dry up your doubts and your fears as you walk by faith. The truth is God is always leading, but that doesn't mean I'm always following. He's given me instructions for how to live, but that doesn't mean I'm consecrating myself and giving myself to him. He still does miracles, and he wants to do miracles in us to show us his power and his glory, but we'll often miss out if we will not walk by faith. Here's the last instruction for us as we close. We jump ahead to Joshua chapter 4, and it says this in verse 1, when all the nations had finished passing over the Jordan, when all 3 million plus or so people get across, the Lord said to Joshua, take 12 men from the people, from each tribe, a man, and command them, saying, take 12 stones from here out of the midst of the Jordan. So all the people are across, but before God tells the priests to move on, the waters are still separated. God tells Joshua, get 12 men, one from each tribe, and go to the middle where the priests are standing and grab a rock. Put it on your shoulders. This isn't like a pebble. This is like a boulder. And I want you to carry this thing, carry it out of the midst from the Jordan to the very place that grab it from the place that the priest's feet were firmly standing, bring them over with you and lay them down in the place where you lodge tonight. And here's what God is telling them to do. I want you to build an altar. I want you to build an altar that will remind you and every generation after you about who God is, what he has done, and how you can have confidence in him. See, here's the instruction for us. Build moments of remembrance. Build moments of remembrance. Let God lead. Align your life with his word. Walk by faith and mark those moments of how God has moved before and how he has moved again and how you will faithfully follow him, because if God has done it before, I can trust he can do it again. He hasn't lost any power. Verse 6 and 7 says, this may be a sign, these rocks that you bring to your camp and set up in a pillar, these will be a sign among you. When your children ask in the time to come, what do these stones mean? What do they mean to you? You shall tell them that the waters of the Jordan were cut off, and that the ark of the covenant of the Lord, and that these stones shall be to the people of Israel a memorial forever. Listen, God was with them from the very beginning. While they were 400 years in slavery in Egypt, he was with them through the wilderness. He was with them now in the middle, and he will see them through to the other side. And he doesn't want them to forget it. Listen, you might be here today and you may feel like you're in the thick of it right now. You might feel overwhelmed or frightened. You might be tired and worn out. You may have convinced yourself that God has turned his back on you and doesn't see you anymore. Don't miss what's in the middle because you're in such a hurry to get to what's on the other side. Don't miss what God is doing now because you just want to get through the obstacle or the challenge. God is with you through all of it. His promises are trustworthy. He's with you even in the middle, and some of us need to pick up a stone or two of remembrance to remind ourselves that God is with me. That one day our kids would look back and say, what is that stone? What is this journal? What is that piece of art? What does this jewelry mean? What is this date? And we'll tell them it's a reminder to us of how God was with us even in the middle. That he sees us through even when the obstacles seem too big to move. One of the moments for our family, one of the monuments really in our family is our son Easton. See, Easton is a living monument for our family because when we wanted more kids, and the doctor said, you shouldn't, you can't, you don't. When we had surrendered our desires for a bigger family, when we took steps to not have any more miscarriages, God began to make a different way. God started answering prayers we had stopped praying. And now I can't help but talk about the goodness of God and his extreme kindness to give us another child and a boy, right? When people ask, you have kids? Oh, yeah, 3. Oh, that's cool. How old are they? Well, I've got 2 girls. They're 14 and 10. And then we have a 5-year-old son. They're like, yeah, you got your boy. And I'm like, you have no idea. Let me tell you about that. Because we got to a place, and I never planned to tell anybody about this, but God just works like this. And there's that procedure you can have to make sure you don't have any more kids. And I had that procedure 1 week before Christmas. And then New Year's Eve, we find out we're pregnant. Only my God. Now when anybody asks about my boy or about my kids, I have an opportunity to tell them about my God. What he's capable of. I was sharing that story with a group of guys this week, and one of them said, you know what's crazy is that my wife prayed for me for over 20 years to come to the Lord. And he came to the Lord about a year ago. Sometimes we pray and we wait and we wait and we wait and we say, God, where are you? What are you doing? And I don't like this and I don't recognize this direction and the walls seem too big and the battle seems too hard. Maybe today is a day where you need to look at the season of your life or look back while the season is still fresh and create some visual reminders of God's faithfulness and what he has done before. To remind yourself of his power so that you can remind yourself where your confidence is in. See, we can find strength and courage when we look back to remind ourselves of the great things that God has done. That he's given us victory, that his promises are true, that he's with us and he'll see us through all of it. And you might be here today and you may have prayed for a long time. And you may still be praying and God hasn't answered. And maybe for you're praying for kids and you've never had kids. And you're just struggling and wrestling with God. Where are you? And look, I don't know why God does what he does. But I do know he calls me to let him lead, to consecrate myself and align my life with him and to walk by faith. And I will never regret the places he leads me. It's not always going to lead me where I want to go. It's not always going to lead me where I expected to be. But I won't regret it because God's led me there and he has a purpose there and he's bringing me through. See, we may not always follow well. We may not always align our lives with God's way, Our doubts and fears may cause us to stumble and fumble more than follow by faith. But when we do experience the favor and the blessing of God, be sure to mark those moments with stones of remembrance. Because one of the greatest inheritances we can leave our children, that we can leave the next generation, are monuments of reminders of what God has done and who He is. To build moments of remembrance for those that come after you. Maybe it's a photo album that points back to a season or a place where God showed up for you. Maybe it's a journal where you write out the story that God, maybe it's a family story time and you're like, look, I haven't written any of those things down yet. You know what they used to do in Bible times? Like they would just sit and tell stories. This is how it was how history was recorded. And maybe for you, it's sitting down with your family and telling them a story after story of what God has done, how He's been faithful, how He's answered prayer. Maybe it's to grab a rock and on a rock just write down the date and write down what God did and as a reminder. And one day when you die and your kids find all these rocks, what is this? Hopefully you would have told them it's the remembrance of God's faithfulness. I'll tell you right now, my son, he knows it, and he will continually be told till the day that I die that he is unique and special. And my prayer is that throughout his life, he would be a living monument to God's goodness. That when people ask him about him and his life, that he would be able to point them to the God who does miracles. All right. Before we finish, I just got to connect a couple dots. Because many of you are in this room have come to a point in your life where you've made a choice to follow Jesus. And you've marked that moment. You've let Him lead your life. You've consecrated yourself. You've confessed your sin. You've accepted Jesus and His payment for your sin. You follow Him faithfully. You've marked that moment. Maybe it was a Bible, and in the front of the Bible, you kind of wrote, like, on this day, I accepted Christ, or maybe you got baptized, or maybe you journaled it, or got a necklace, or just put that date in your calendar as a mark of when you put your faith and trust in God. Many of you, some of you have done that. And yet there are others in this room right now that have never surrendered their life to Jesus Christ. You've known about Him, you've gone to church for a long time, but you can't remember the last time you let Him lead your life. You can't remember the last time you consecrated yourself and laid bare before God and said, you can have it all. You can't remember the last time you stepped out in faith. Hear me right now. God has promised you a land as well. A land that was better than the promised land that He gave to the Israelites. It's a land, it's called heaven. And it's a land that does not perish, it's eternal. And He's promised it for all of those who put their faith and trust in Jesus Christ, who let Him lead their life, who consecrate themselves. But like the Israelites, until we're willing to let God lead my life, until I will consecrate myself to the Lord, confess my sin, believe in Jesus and His work on the cross, until I begin to walk by faith as the fruit and evidence of God working and changing me from the inside out, until then, I will never be able to inherit the promised land of eternal life. So don't wait. Here's the craziest thing. There is a monument, there is a marker that all of history, that every human on the planet sees and recognizes. It's the cross. And it is a monument, it is a moment to remind us and point back to what God has done, His faithfulness and His goodness. He has brought us this far. You won't stop now. This might be your moment. This might be the moment for you to mark, or for you to think back at the season, the moment where God answered your prayer, where He did a miracle, where you surrendered your life completely. So I want to encourage you today to take some time, and the band's going to come up, and we're going to sing another song and let that song pour over you as a prayer and an encouragement. Sing along or just rest in the moment to be reminded of what God has done for you. To mark the moment, what he has done for me. I'm going to go search through my calendar, and I'm going to find the date. I'm going to search through my photos, and I'm going to create an album. And as you leave today, here's your homework. Man, this really felt like school today, didn't it? I'm so sorry. Here's your homework. We've got some rocks on your way out. They're on a table. They're going to kind of just be all dumped out. On your way out, grab a rock. And sometime this week, maybe even this afternoon, use it as your reminder, your memory stone. There's no power in this rock. It's just a rock. But it can remind you of the power of the God who saw you through, even in the middle of the hardest times in your life. Remember what God has done. Remember his faithfulness. Remember that he's with me. Let him lead.